It's NFL Week 15 already, Ron, and it's just two of us today. We're going to discuss last week. We're going to discuss next week. We're going to discuss the teams coming off the bye. We're going to discuss playoff resumes. We're going to discuss pivoting and betting. And what else are we going to discuss, Ron?
I guess I could come up with another topic if we're short on topics. I have occasionally mentioned on shows that I do plays of the year. And as it turns out, I have 6 of them this week that I made in August. And I can kind of go over, peel back the curtain a little bit, the rationale for why I did it at that particular time and why I like some of the plays and why I wish I didn't have a couple of the plays. But that's the nature of gambling.
Well, I'll bet you if the line's better, then you like all those plays.
No, one of them I don't actually.
Oh.
So we'll see how that goes. And the line's better, I think, in 4 out of 6, which I don't particularly like that track record. I'd rather be something like 5 out of 6, but that's the way it goes.
Birdie's in the viewing audience. I appreciate his help last night. I had to do a radio show, and I had lost the whole day for various reasons, and was basically working off Sunday night information. So just was reached out, looked for a helping hand on various bits of information. So it's always important. That brings up a topic. It's always important to network with people and so that you have different streams of information available to you.
Yeah, and sometimes we get tips from the people who participate on this show. It's not a one-way street. I appreciate the feedback, and it leads to some actionable items down the road as well.
There's nobody that knows everything, so it's contributions are valuable coming from any direction, especially in this now that X is the media. So we are all the media. We share amongst ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Better than the mainstream media, right?
Yes. Okay. So let's get last week out of the way. And I left last week's paperwork out in the garage, dang it. All right.
Okay. Well, I can recap for you. Congratulations on another good week. You handled it very well. My week was a little bit more mediocre. A very positive Thursday, 1-1 Sunday morning, 1-1 Sunday afternoon, 2-1 on parlays, where I wanted to hook up with the Pittsburgh Steelers, but didn't want to give the points. So I put them in 3 money line parlays, won 2 of them, lost 1 of them. Props were basically even almost dead for a while, but basically even. So that was my week. Kind of nothing big. I think the biggest thing that I did was latching on to, who did I latch on to? Well, I had the Rams. I don't think I had a big play last week.
Oh, I have such a hard time finding. I don't know what it is. I'm one of the most inept people at finding certain very easy to find things on the internet as far as NFL goes. Mm-hmm. Just trying to find last week's schedule.
Oh, okay. Well, that's when the handy dandy sheet comes into play, where I could see it right at my eye, just the one sheet of paper, everything that happened last week, all my plays and stuff.
Okay, well, we started off with the Packers and the Lions. We talked about how the Lions are living rent free in the Packers' heads, and therefore I thought that that would be to their benefit a little bit. Strange game, lots of 4th down conversions by Campbell. The one thing that I did read about the 4th down conversions is that they were using the same formation and doing different things. So they would see what Green Bay would do. They'd use the same formation, and then they would be doing something different. And they had that last fourth down play in their back pocket for a real emergency, so to speak, when they instead of kicking that field goal. So there was more rhyme and reason than just a Campbell off the cuff type careless or reckless decision there.
Yeah, live by the sword, die by the sword, but they've generally been living by the sword more than anything. I like Green Bay in that game. As I said on Thursday with Ted, I like the overs in that game. Game went pretty much according to what I expected. It's a divisional rivalry. It's a good divisional rivalry. They know each other well. To your point about changing formations, you have to give a different look to a team that you see twice a year, every year. So,
well, actually, they were giving the same formation.
So yeah, same formation, but running different plays.
Yeah,
is what you said. That's what you want to do. If somebody looks at the formation, they said, "Oh, we've seen it before," but then you run a different twist to it. It makes a lot of sense. And Detroit's going to run a lot. Detroit has a lot of flexibility offensively because they have so many weapons that they could go to. I suggested that they go to Laporta, and they did go to Laporta. In fact, they broke a record. I didn't realize it when I tweeted out at the time. 6 receivers caught 5 or more passes, which is a record. And so Detroit used all its weapons, and that's dangerous. Still have problem with their pass defense.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about that in this week's games, obviously. Hold on. I forgot to download my spreadsheets on this computer, so.
Well, I could start on Atlanta, Minnesota. Everything you wanted to know about Kirk Cousins and his 7 interceptions or whatever in the last 2 weeks is all you need to know about what's going on. Formerly a careful quarterback, Sam Darnold was much more careful than Kirk Cousins in that game, and it showed.
They were in good shape for a good portion of that game, and kind of shot themselves in the feet. Cousins was okay for a period of time, from what I understand.
Yeah, actually, they won the sack battle. I'm so down on Atlanta's sack production. Here's an interesting look at Atlanta. They have 9 sacks in the last 2 games, which is really good. And they're still last in sacks for the year of all 32 teams. That's pretty amazing. Minnesota 11-2. And if Kansas City wasn't in the league, you'd say Minnesota was winning all the close games, even though that one wasn't close. But you wonder how good.
But Atlanta, basically, if you looked at just the box scores, would have won the game. Am I wrong?
They would have certainly made it competitive at the end. I think because of Atlanta's defense, Sam Darnold would have made one more play than Atlanta's defense could have actually stopped them on. And home field helped, of course. But yeah, I mean, Atlanta is now 6-7. And although their schedule is still favorable, they could still, all they have to do is tie. I believe all they have to do is tie Tampa at the end of the year and they would win the division, but they're 1 game behind now.
Atlanta has the head-to-head tiebreaker over San Francisco and over Arizona on conference record.
Probably won't come into play. I think they have to win the division or they're out.
I think no, they've got a wild card path, but
yeah, they need a lot to happen. Most likely with Washington is where they would need that to happen.
No, the Rams. If the Rams lose this week and Atlanta wins this week, then they would be tied, and then Arizona would just have to. I don't know what the tiebreaker is with them, so
Well, actually, the 3 wild cards would be Minnesota, Green Bay, and Washington. Rams might have to win the division too, or they're squeezed out.
Yeah.
So it's all convoluted. Maybe when they go to 8 playoff teams, they can all vie for it.
Let's see. Let me get back to my. The next game, the Dolphins and the Jets. That was ridiculous. The Jets outplayed the Dolphins. Somehow the Dolphins came away with the win. Dolphins defense still sucks. Basically, a lethargic effort. On Miami's front. You would have thought they would have been in a much better position and not have to take it down to the wire and into overtime.
Yeah, I think Miami's an incomplete team. Sure, they could beat any particular team that's a non-playoff team. Remember, Miami hasn't beaten a lot of teams with winning records, and it's in their heads a little bit. Jets didn't have a winning record. They found a way to win, but this was another game that the Jets could have won. They could have put it away a little bit earlier, but the Jets aren't putting anything away. I didn't pay much attention to this game, except for at the end when the only 2 games that were left on the red zone were the Jets and the Giant game. And unfortunately, they kept going back and forth with those, so I was compelled to watch both of them.
Well, we talked about Atlanta, Minnesota. The Saints-Giants, that was about what I expected. The Giants are playing hard, though. So somebody asked earlier what teams are automatic fade teams. What's really important this time of year is you're trying to recognize which teams are making effort and which teams are not. So if you can definitely latch onto a team that is apparently out of it, but you are sure that they are making effort, you actually have to take a closer look at those games because they are getting a little ballooned out. There's looking ahead to this week, there are some strange lines we'll discuss. So,
okay. Yeah, I have a team that we can discuss that in particular. I do think the Giants, and especially New Orleans, they're still trying. I just don't think they're that good.
Yeah, I mean, New Orleans is really hurting. They signed DiNucci this morning. I don't know if you know that.
I should print my Super Bowl tickets because of that.
Jacksonville, Tennessee. Jacksonville was a popular play. I thought it was too popular, but I played them anyway, and that worked out. Tennessee what is Tennessee's problem? I mean, everybody's been betting them every week, it seems, and they're not that unhealthy at this point. They're pretty healthy. Why are they so pathetic?
First of all, I think it's helpful for all of us to, at the end of the week, assess what we did right, what we did wrong, what we would do over and stuff like that. I did put a late play in on Tennessee when it went to a flat 3. And I would do it over again only because Tennessee dominated the game, led 3-0, missed a field goal. So this has been what has happened to Jacksonville the last 3-4 weeks. Whether it be Philadelphia, whether it be the Minnesota Vikings in the red zone, teams are letting Jacksonville hang around. And in reality, I do think Jacksonville could have been quit. It would have been quit all over the last 3-4 weeks with Jacksonville. I think Tennessee's a better team, and they made some horrendous coaching decisions around the red zone, which teams are prone to do. And Tennessee just flat out lost the game, and that's the way it goes.
Did I read that you think Jacksonville is basically going through the motions for the most part? If they were to be hit with a large deficit, they'd pack it in during a game?
I think they did pack it in against Philadelphia, but then Philly made all those mistakes. I think they did pack it in against Minnesota, and then Minnesota in the red zone. What were they, 4 times in the red zone and nothing much to show for it in that particular game? Jacksonville's looking for excuses to pack their bags, and no one's letting them pack their bags, and they're getting a kind of a false sense of security. So I think they're going to try a little bit harder. We could have seen something like Washington last year. Remember their fire sale, and then they lost their last 8 games, most of them straight up and against the spread. I thought that was going to be happening to Jacksonville this year, but they're getting a reprieve based on who they're playing.
The Philadelphia game was annoying. Most sharps and myself included were on Philadelphia. The metrics said that they should cover more than handedly, but they took the took the foot off the pedal with the Carolina, and they made a lot of unusual in-game moves with personnel that they were taking out their top personnel in certain situations when normally they'd be in, and they were so close to making it a 2-score game a couple of times, and for whatever reason it didn't pan out. They just went through the motions, and that was annoying.
Whew. Okay, I have to be tactful here. I don't think Philadelphia was ever the sharp side in this game. Carolina had played 3 straight games where they were within 1 to 3 points in each of those 3 games. We knew Carolina was trying big time. We knew Bryce Young was playing much better football. And we also knew that Philadelphia was in a bad scheduling situation, favored by all these many points against a team that had a pedigree stat-wise that could hang for a while with this team. This is not a great passing team, Philadelphia. This is a team that relies on other teams to make mistakes, pass the ball too much against their secondary, do some different things. Just not a good situation for Philly. I do understand that the line went up from 13 to 14 and even 14 with juice. And I had to take Carolina with that because I was getting a trying team with Philadelphia in a bad situation, and I liked the matchup. So I don't feel that I was square by taking 14 points. I feel I had valid reasons.
Well, yeah, the line should end each week with some sort of an efficiency, and should swing some to somebody's liking at some point.
Yeah, I'm not saying the line was wrong. By power ratings alone, the line should have been 13. So you weren't getting any massive value, 13, even 14. But there were other reasons to believe that Carolina was a much different team the previous 3 weeks and this week than they were before. When you run your trailing 4 or 5 weeks, I think this should have been noticeable about Carolina.
Yeah, well, we discussed it. I absolutely believe Carolina was making an effort, and they're just outside the top 10 for gain of value in the NFL over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah.
Wasn't that I was ignoring it. It didn't get caught.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody was ignoring the fact the Panthers had covered 3 or 4 in a row.
Yeah. No, I mean, as bad as I feel about playing Tennessee, but would do it again because of Jacksonville. I played Carolina because of Carolina, not just because of the situation.
I got nervous when they announced Pickens out. I had the Steelers. I thought I had them all over the place just to win the game. And you had to worry. I mean, this Winston factor just, makes you nervous if you're betting against him because he can get hot. But on the other side of the coin, he's going to make mistakes every game too. So Pittsburgh seemed to have that game in hand pretty much the whole game. And there's just something different about the Steelers this year where they're not losing. This is the type of game in previous years that they would lose somehow, potentially. Maybe not this one because of the divisional rivalry and the revenge factor, but there's been a handful of other games where they've been the home team, favored by 6, 7, 8, and they've won. So I just fear repeats of previous history. And this Judy's getting really dangerous for Cleveland also. He can really make some plays.
Yeah, I agree with you with just about everything you said there. And the Pickens factor scared me, so I went moneyline parlay with them, hooking them up instead because I was worried about the 7. but for the most part, Pittsburgh, which is now something like 23-1 their last 4 straight up hosting Cleveland, with a lot of spread victories and the almost immediate revenge and the war of words and everything else that was going on. And I agree, Winston is kind of that X factor, that loose cannon kind of thing. It really should have been a straight up Pittsburgh play, but in the end, I kind of chickened out and went the money line route.
Tampa and the Raiders. I was kind of surprised to see Tampa Bay cover that, but I didn't use the Raiders either. I've been noticing some slippage in Baker's performances the last 2 to 3 games. Have you noticed that?
He has been somewhat turnover prone almost all year. This may have been one of Tampa's poorest games of the year. I did watch a little bit that. I followed it along a little bit. I read about it. Tampa would have lost to a normal team, but the way Vegas is coached, and I talked about this on the Twitter platform, the stuff that Antonio Pierce did in game, kicking a field goal, 4th and goal with the 2, and then kicking a field goal late and doing all these other things, that's not 2024 football. He put his team analytically in a deeper hole every time he made a decision offensively. He needs better people around him to make these decisions. Tampa tried to lose the game. Vegas made sure that Tampa would not lose the game.
I'm just looking at the last few games. He's thrown 2 interceptions each of the last 2 games.
Yeah, he has a lot on the year too.
He has 2, 4, but he hadn't thrown one in 3 games, so he had a nice 3-game stretch there.
Yeah, it was just a performance thrown in, maybe because they didn't take the opponent seriously. Whatever the case may be, Tampa won by margin in a game that they played poorly.
Yeah. Seattle and Arizona. I liked. I mentioned that we both talked about it. You had that first-year head coach finally getting his bye, and they backed into that bye on their heels, and they came out smelling like a rose, and they've won every game since. And now they are leading the division and are the favorites to win the division. They've got a home game this week that's important. Are you a believer in the Seahawks?
I think I need to do more work on the Seahawks. We're not experts on all 32 teams, and I think I've misjudged Seattle a little bit. Their power ratings, trying to see where their current power rating is for me, because they've obviously been moving up. They're separating themselves in that NFC West. Remember when everybody was pretty much the same?
Yeah.
Now they're starting to separate themselves. So in my opinion, I need to do more work on Seattle.
I've got Seattle rated higher than Tampa Bay.
I have Seattle rated higher than Tampa Bay.
That's strange. So a little disappointed. I would have bet Seattle pretty strong last week if I wasn't sticking to my model. The model didn't really show any value.
The one parlay I lost was to Arizona. To Arizona money line to Pittsburgh money line. So that was the parlay I lost.
The Bills Rams, that was a huge game for me. But I really wish Buffalo had won that game. A couple of goofy big plays combined in the Rams' favor, combined with the Bills' defense being a turnstile to the end zone. and essentially Stafford played a perfect game. And the team itself, offensively was, seemed unstoppable. a little bit also. It wasn't just the Buffalo defense. Stafford threaded some needles.
We talked about both defenses. As much as I talked about where I had Buffalo rated, and I had a lot of disagreement last week, it's not like I had the Rams defense rated that well either. I mean, I really thought Josh Allen and Matthew Stafford had some advantages in this game. And I'll say it again, Buffalo's defense is not good.
Let's see.
Yeah, what Bertie says about Seattle, it's really true. The fact that Seattle is growing as their coach gets comfortable with the roster. I know he wants to beef up a couple of areas. The linebacker, they traded away somebody else got injured and so on. But the master plan is going very well right now in Seattle.
Just looking at rankings and stuff, the Rams are still not really moving the needle significantly with any progress. It's
their
amazing.
Overall ranking.
No, they're not moving in mine.
They're moving in mine. I have them equal to Seattle now.
I don't think so. Bears 49ers, that was one of those oddball games. I didn't anticipate I would have been on San Francisco, but when that line got down to where it was, I took another look. And that's one of the mistakes that I've made in the past, where today I've got all my games circled, and throughout the course of the week, a line will just trickle and come into range. And sometimes I'll forget to realize that. So San Francisco came into range for me and ended up on them. But that was, I didn't understand the overwhelming support of the Bears. I could see why there would have been some, or even a fair amount, but it was overwhelming. Everybody on the Bears, that surprised me. They obviously no-showed. They don't have the personnel. San Francisco has pride, and they had a team meeting before the game that worked. Obviously, Purdy had a fantastic game. The game wasn't even as close as the 38-13 final.
Yeah, it really doesn't matter who San Francisco puts in the backfield. They're going to be able to run the ball. So losing McCaffrey only affects, to some extent, the blocking, because he's a good blocker, but definitely their ability to pass catch out of the backfield. And now they're going to be without another running back. It looks like they're going to be calling somebody off the street. But
they were without CMC and Mason last week, and then the guy that was in last week that had a great game, he's injured. So
you're right. Yeah, so they're going down to new levels, but somebody will still be able to run 4.5, 5 yards per carry, but he won't know the whole offense. The big problem is the team they were playing, Chicago, is in complete disarray. You thought maybe they'd get that new coach interim bump. Maybe that was a possibility, because all of Chicago's recent losses were self-inflicted wounds. I mean, they basically botched the time, botched a field goal, allowed a Hail Mary to Washington. Everything Chicago did was coach driven. So they were better than their record indicated, but that's long gone now. They're pretty much done. And
they actually are not eliminated from the playoffs.
All right. I wouldn't recommend a ticket on them.
Yes. Somebody was arguing with Ferreira, who's been posting the playoff scenarios, and there would have to be a 3-way tie for them to make the playoffs. If they win all their games and somebody else loses all their games, the head-to-head, the other team would have the advantage. But if a third team tied, then Chicago would have the tiebreaker.
All right. I'm not going to lose any sleep on that. So
no.
Chargers,
Kansas City was a huge game for me. was scared to play the Chargers. I thought without McConkey in the lineup, without the running back in the lineup, and the Chiefs, hanging on by thread game after game, it just, 4 points didn't seem like a lot. And I had that game both directions quite a bit, and it landed nicely.
Yeah, I think I would have been on the Chargers if they had an equal amount of rest. They didn't. It just seemed like, how are they going to be refocusing for this particular game? And then the late news about McConkey. So I left it completely alone. Again, not surprised that the Chargers are making progress. Look for, if there's any team that is probably going to draft an early running back, it's going to be the Chargers, because one thing that's been painfully missing from the Chargers is a running back that can actually catch the ball and do some other things out of the backfield. So Harbaugh's building the team in his image the way he likes it, but you can't do everything in one draft, and so there's more work to be done. I take away that the Chargers played a credible game, and this is where they are right now, and I'd be scared of them in the future.
I had look at this note I had here. Yeah, it's funny. One of the tidbits I had from a previous conversation was that the Chargers have done an abysmal job of second half adjustments on offense, and their offense actually ranked 29th in the league coming into last week in the second half.
Okay.
And they're only scoring 8. They were only scoring 8 points per game. So interesting that they made. I mean, this game looked over. I made adjustments and bought back the other way to protect against Kansas City's blowout. And that ended up being a donation when the Chargers came back, but it was still for the good.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, Dallas, that ended in a predictable way last night. That was I didn't see anything to do on that game. I took both directions, one in a parlay with Cincinnati plus 3.5 and Dallas teaser plus 15.5, and they both came in the middle. But that was just to fight the boredom, more or less.
Well, I can tell you that Dallas probably should have won the game, but we know what happened at the end of the game with Leon Letts revisiting to the NFL season. I had a couple of people text me this morning saying, that's it. I'm not betting on the NFL and this and that, whatever. And I think because they lost on Dallas. And I think the bigger conversation to have is, this is what teams that do not have that attention to detail trait do. Dallas is not a well-coached team. We know that. Dallas has some players that have had suspensions. They've had other things and so on. If you're going to have a team touch a ball when they shouldn't touch the ball, it's probably going to be a team like Dallas that does that, and it's not going to be one of these well-oiled teams. So unfortunately, you get what you pay for when you take a side like Dallas. But they were the right side.
Well, yeah, they were playing. Yeah, every time I looked at the TV, I didn't follow the game closely, but every time I looked at the TV, Dallas was representing themselves well. And I was curious how Cincinnati wasn't able to light up the scoreboard more than they did.
Cincinnati got gashed at the line of scrimmage. Dallas was running right through them.
That was a very good result for contests. A lot of people had Dallas in contests around me, so I can't say I was that upset to see that happen, even though I didn't actually bet a side there. I'd like to touch just on, before we get into next week.
Sure.
I want to just briefly mention betting pivots, because I've heard on 2 different podcasts and one group chat notable people complaining that, they're not having good years, or, things are working against them, et cetera, et cetera. And, I feel like I was kind of in the same position last year and this year, where, okay, the model's working, but there's such a high percentage of these games that are coming down to nonsense. And we don't have these models, and we don't place these pregame bets, hoping that it comes down to the final minute of the game and it can go to either side. So, just logically, you're trying to figure out, well, how can I protect myself? How can I remove myself from such a high percentage of games that end like the last 2 Monday nights have ended with idiotic plays in the final seconds. So, and it's not just those 2 games. There's been, just in the 2 weeks, there has to be like 5 or 6 of these games that just, you have no idea who's going to win the game with seconds to go, and nonsense happens. And that's the reason why, I first looked at teasers and such, and I actually am pivoting again, because I'm constantly evaluating what's winning. And the model's doing okay, but not great. And so I'm looking, the teasers are doing okay. So I pivoted once again, and I've switched away from as many teasers as I was doing, and I'm doing more layered parlays. And the reason I do that is it helps me manage the risk. I can monitor the risk. And the other feather in the cap that's been highly successful is integrating the alt lines. So the difference between a teaser is you're stuck with 6 or 7 or 10 points, and those are your choices. But you can go to some of these shops will let you parlay alternate lines. And as I pointed out to clients, you don't necessarily, if you have a shop that won't let you parlay alternate lines, then there's an alternative to that also, and that is, okay, bet the first game, risk, X amount at the alternate line. If that wins, then you take that amount plus what you won, and then you make a money line parlay, or you bet the other game or games on the money line with the money you invested and the money that you won. And it's the same thing as a pre-flop parlay. So, and the good thing about alternate lines is that you can get the exact lines that you want. And it's been just a godsend. And I looked at the parlays for the year. I'm at 70% on parlays. And it's just been my bread and butter. 65% ROI, which is obscene. But it's because if my model's not right, it's at least against the spread, it's at least directionally helpful. And I'm getting all the key numbers that I need. And it just seems a hell of a lot more efficient than just teasers, although I still use the teasers. And as you said earlier in the show, as you said, well, I didn't want to do this with Arizona. I put them in a parlay. I didn't want to do this with Pittsburgh. I put them in 3 parlays. So you're pivoting, in your own way. But I just wanted to mention that to people, that you don't change or pivot for the sake of it if things aren't working, but you at least have to be open to the idea of betting alternatives. And when other people are too busy doing media 10 times a week, and have families and do this and do that, they don't have the time or the resources to really consider that sort of stuff. And that's why they're complaining, because I just feel like I'm betting my way out of it. And I'm kind of happy about that.
I think rather than rehash that a little bit, I just want to say that I'm sure you're doing this with ROI in mind, because you're, unlike a lot of people, you are tabulating and you were talking about your ROI and what you're looking for. And I want to emphasize that when I do the parlay to Pittsburgh and I'm saying, well, now I don't want to give 6.5. I'm worried about Pickens and stuff like that. And I want to pivot in this game. What's my ROI? How does it change if I just need Pittsburgh to win and I just need Arizona to win? Because Arizona-Seattle games can get close, even though I thought Arizona would be able to have that immediate kind of revenge, that they would reset themselves and so on. You're still going to get more ROI out of betting them at even than giving 2.5 or 3 points. So the combination of the two, I said, okay, I have the combination of the two. I'm getting plus something. What's the percent of time that I'm going to win this kind of bet? And is there going to be a return on investment if this scenario played out 10 times or 15 times? We all know in any 1 week, people who hit 55 or more percent against the spread can go 3-7 easily because it's a small sample size. So my only addition to this is that when you're pivoting to these things, recalculate ROI, because you don't want to do anything that's against what your return on investment would be.
Yeah, I don't look at it that way, and it's not that I just never have thought about it that way. What's most important to me is winning, and what's going to get me the win. And just by accident, I pivoted into something that has a higher ROI, but that could flip flop at some point. But we don't know. So, I mean, I did use a lot of plus money. I don't do any 2-team teasers. They're always 3 or 4 or 5 teams getting plus money. So I want to be putting in as many plus money wagers as possible. The majority of, I think I had, I don't know, about 25 plays last week, and I would guess 17 of them were plus money versus laying juice. So, that changes. If you're able to pivot into bets that you don't have to pay juice on, that's also another added benefit with parlays versus teasers. I don't think this week is necessarily a good week for teasers. I'm having problems. So.
Yeah. And anything you do when you're layering or whatever, just word to everybody watching and listening. Make sure you track your plays, because you don't want to end up looking at your sheet at the end of the day and saying, wow, I ended up with 6 plays on this team. How did I get out of whack? Make sure you're writing down and tracking what you're doing.
I have to write out, because I have 20 to 25 plays a week, I have to write out essentially what looks like a family tree and how they all relate to each other. So, and I have to rewrite it over and over again and re-verify. I go into the accounts and make sure plays are still active and there's no mistakes and such. So it's very labor intensive.
Yep. Next, as we get into this week, let's talk about the 6 teams off buys and what our impressions are. Because this is the time of the year. Is it too late to reset? Is it too early to reset? This is the home stretch now. This is every team playing every week, 4-game sprint to the wire. So in order, Washington had a late buy. I wasn't, it's a blessing and a curse, because the new coach didn't get to reset until very, very late. And remember, they lost those 3 games, including they lost to Dallas, which a lot of people were surprised they lost to Dallas, but there was a fatigue factor. Now, they won their last game before the bye, so they reset, but they had a 3-in-a-row losing streak, I believe. So, I think they're going to be okay with the late bye, but they were hurt by having this late bye, I still believe.
Boy, I can't even read my writing on this. I have a note that Washington they had the late buy. Boy, I don't know what this note means. Damn it.
Oh, well. But I think Washington's okay. They can start getting involved now with putting more on the plate of a rookie quarterback. Maybe their defense can continue to improve just a little bit. I think there was staff fatigue in terms of doing the grind, 14 straight weeks with new players, new staff, and everything. So this is a good reset where it could have been disastrous if they didn't get off to the start that they did.
Well, I have Washington. Washington's been a bread and butter team most of the year for me, and hate to kind of see it, but they went into the bye sort of like not as bad as Seattle, but in the bottom 6 or 7 teams over the previous 5 weeks.
That's fatigue. That's what I was saying. I believe that's fatigue.
So I think the bye does them some good here. I would expect them to come out in good shape. I'm optimistic on Washington going forward.
Do you think, because we can sort of hit on these games as we go to the bye week. So on Washington, New Orleans, do you think the spread is a little high? Obviously, there's an adjustment for Carr not being there. It's Jack Hayner or it's Spencer Rattler. But they're not going against the best defense of all time. I'm a little surprised that the spread crossed 7 was 7.5. Now it's more 7. But even then, I didn't think it would reach 7. That was my first impression.
Yeah, no, my first impression, I saw 7.5, and I go, boy, that's a lot. But my numbers indicate that, if anything, it's a little low.
Yeah.
And
I have to reset. On the game, but I think we both sound like we're in agreement and said it didn't expect to see that number to start off with.
Yeah, Birdie brings out a good point. Lattimore comes back, is likely to come back to face his old team. That's an interesting scenario.
If he's back, we keep hearing that.
It's looking like he will be.
For Houston, I think this was a really good reset. I think the defense was rounding into shape already. I think they're going to be sharper. They were winning games they shouldn't have won because they got to play Tennessee and Jacksonville and the Colts, who just shot themselves in the foot. Houston's correct record should be under 50%, but this reset, I think, makes them a better team.
I looked at this line and I said, are they out of their minds? I looked at the 2.5s out there. I go, what the hell is going on here? I thought that line was ridiculous. And I looked at my last week's numbers and I said, well, Miami really didn't play a good game. I can't see them closing this gap, but I got to wait for the new numbers to come in. And looking at the play, I'm trying to figure out a reason in the world Houston has to win another game. They're not going to improve from the 4 spot. They're stuck in the 4 spot.
They're 8-5, right?
They can't catch Pittsburgh, Buffalo, or Kansas City. Okay, so they are stuck in the 4 spot, and they are 3 games ahead of Indianapolis with 4 to go. And I'm like, So I mean, it's a part of the equation that Houston technically really can mail it into the playoffs. Not that I would think that that's a smart way to, handle it, but, who knows what's in these players' minds? Will that factor into your equation?
Not at all, because if I'm Houston's coach, I'm saying I just saw Buffalo give up 44 points. We can catch them. Buffalo plays Detroit this week, this and that, whatever. I'm looking at the schedule. If I'm Houston, I'm spinning everything positive. We are going to catch them. That's the message. I don't even think he puts doubts in his players. That's how I would motivate the team.
Yeah, I have this in my notes, but Birdie's bringing it to my attention. They started their season at the Hall of Fame game, so they've had the longest season so far.
And they had those 5 new starters defensively. Stroud, year 2, everybody figured them out. They had primetime games this year. Remember, they didn't have primetime games last year. They were an expansion team, essentially, with a new roster and a new coach. So all those points are great points. This is Houston's first legit reset, and I think you're going to see a better team. Baltimore, tell me about what do you think about Baltimore's bye?
They've lost to some good teams, but I just don't think I think that they'll come out like they always do. They're just sort of like an enigma. If they weren't a raven, they'd be a cat of some sort, because they just seem to not give a crap and just do what they're going to do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think veteran teams like late bye weeks because there's a lot of tread on their tires, and there's a lot of veteran players on Baltimore in various spots. I think this is a good bye for them. I like what Lamar said after the last game, saying, I'm going to put it more in my hands. I'm going to run. I'm going to do everything I can to get this team over the finish line. I think if he says that in week 11, that's dangerous because there's so many more games that he has to be at this level. But if he says that with 4 games to go plus the playoffs, I think it might be doable. So I'm kind of lukewarm positive on Baltimore.
And they went in the top 10 of improving teams. So, even though they kind of leave a bad taste in your mouth or a questionable taste, you have to respect that they will come back stronger, and I do. 15 points says that they will.
Yeah, getting past this game, it's not unlike Baltimore to steamroll during the regular season and then tense up in the playoffs.
Yeah,
the Colts.
This would be an interesting game with the Giants. What do you anticipate on that?
If I have to watch that game, I'm going to be sick. No, the Giants at home, now they're 0-7 at home. I don't want a part of that game.
Indianapolis, my friend.
Indianapolis. So 2 factors are contradictory to me in assessing Indianapolis bye. So I take nothing from their bye. The one good thing is they could put more of the playbook with Richardson. They can. It's time to feed him the whole playbook to see what he's made of. But contrary to that, and my problem with Indy is they're not going to change the way they play defense, which is the softest vanilla defense that I've seen for years and years. 74% allowed versus the pass. I mean, it's just so bad that I just don't think the bye is going to benefit them. It's going to benefit Richardson. It's not going to benefit the team.
I have notes here that this Denver defense might be a defense that Richardson could have some success with running and the way that he plays. How do you see that matchup?
I would agree with you. This is dangerous. Peyton's a good defensive coach, and one thing about this, this Denver bye I didn't like, primarily because they were on a roll. They were in rhythm, and it's kind of what you hope it doesn't happen to Denver, what happened to Arizona, that they kind of fall out of rhythm. The disclaimer there is Peyton has always been a good coach off rest. So he's going to have this team ready. But you're right, Indianapolis is a challenge for them. I don't think the bye automatically means that Denver's the favorite team in this matchup. But I love what the combination, the marriage of Bo Nix and Sean Payton is a really good one.
Well, yeah, Indianapolis, as pointed out here by Russell, was really, really banged up, and they'll come back in healthier.
Yeah, those wide receivers. So if they could put a little bit more on Richardson's playbook, it would help.
And Denver's got the Thursday game ahead.
Yeah. Speaking of teams that are trying, New England is the last team that we have to discuss on a bye. And I really think that the master plan is in place. I've heard it from management. Even today, I heard it as they like what they're doing. They're building something. They're not cutting corners. They're doing all this thing. Drake May is a tremendous asset in terms of the ceiling as compared to Jacoby Brissett. And Drake May, whether he makes mistakes this year or doesn't, I think New England is going to test him. They're going to let him do what he needs to do. They're going to throw caution to the wind. They have a lot of work to do. The offensive line is not that great. The coaching is not that great. All the blunders that Mayo has made as a coach have to be corrected. At least he gets this rest. It came way too late to salvage this season, Chris. Way too late. And that's why I was so bearish on New England at the beginning of the year and in the middle of the year. Is this buy is too late for this team and this roster. But I think we'll start seeing some good things. I think they're going to try the entire rest of the year.
Yeah, I agree with you. That line seemed high to me when it was out, but I left it alone at 6.5, and now it's down to 4.5. I'm closer to having to get involved with Arizona than I am New England at this point, but I agree with everything you said. I don't trust Arizona's motivation going forward. There was a statistic, I didn't write down the specifics of it, but Murray, throughout his career, after a certain point of the season, maybe after week 10 or so, basically wins 30% of the games or covers 30% of the games. It's really, really ugly the way he finishes off seasons. So I don't want a reason to take Arizona, that's for sure. And I can think of a lot of reasons to be on the Patriots.
It's not a straight line, thing that a team just improves every week a certain amount. Sometimes there's a little back and forth, and there's like an earthquake type shift, the seismic meter. And that's what I see with Arizona's defense. We could talk about quarterbacks and Murray and other situations all we want, but I haven't seen steady progress from Arizona's defense. And it could be a coaching issue. This was a young coaching staff when they started in 2023. They seem to make some progress if you compare this year to last year, but I'm not sure it's enough progress to say that Arizona's on the right track completely.
Yeah, I show Arizona the third worst team over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, so that's concerning.
And offensively, the second worst team. There's something, and Connor's been playing. I don't understand why they haven't been doing well. They've been kind of out of my wheelhouse for deeper analysis. You picked up anything on Arizona that's odd?
No, the NFC West has been one of those divisions for me where I kind of stayed away from San Francisco a lot because there's so many injuries. I have a good handle on the Rams, but Seattle and Arizona are teams that I probably need to do a deeper dive. That's the honest truth.
I don't think Anthony Richardson has any chance for any awards.
Yeah, I like that comment by Russell. I don't think enough people know the Colts exist. Well, I mean, the problem with the Colts is they don't change. They went out of the box to draft Richardson, but they don't change schemes. They don't change this. You got one quarterback, Flacco, who's strictly a pocket passer, and then you're trying to use the same offense with Richardson, who's not a pocket passer. I don't know that Indianapolis knows what their identity is.
Your other topic was playoff resumes, and the Thursday night game is certainly brings that discussion into fold.
Yeah, I wasn't sure to save it or not because we're near the end of the show, but I will say that I've compiled, when the playoffs come, there are certain teams that have a playoff resume overall look to them, and certain teams that they just don't make the Super Bowl. It's kind of a combination. Can they make the Super Bowl? Can they not make the Super Bowl? And with two exceptions over 50 whatever Super Bowls, teams that do not have a Super Bowl resume do not make the Super Bowl. The two exceptions that made the Super Bowl that should never have been there were the Chicago Bears the year they lost to Peyton Manning's team, and the Atlanta Falcons, the year that they led 28-3 on New England and lost the game. I thought, I was thinking during the game, wow, this team's going to win. I may have to revisit this whole formula and stuff like that. And then they go out and blow it because Brady got in rhythm, and all the things that I worried about their resume, how they defend defensively, came to fruition. But Atlanta put up a good statement. So right now, anyway, I have 4 teams that have a Super Bowl resume. There's 4 categories, Chris. Currently have a Super Bowl resume, lack a Super Bowl resume, not sure yet, there's still 4 games to go, and teams with special exemptions, which I will explain. So there's only 4 teams that have a Super Bowl resume. You can guess them if you'd like.
Well, we've got San Francisco, Kansas City, the Rams.
With Super Bowl resumes this year?
Well, I'm not understanding what you by resume.
Teams that have the profile that they could go out and win a Super Bowl.
Oh, okay. I thought you were.
Teams that have been there, done that kind of thing. No, teams that have the statistical profile where they qualify to win a Super Bowl, and there's 4 right now.
Detroit, Philly, Buffalo, and Kansas City.
Detroit, Philly, correct. Houston has a Super Bowl resume based on their profile. Not saying they're going to get there or whatever. And Pittsburgh has a Super Bowl resume based on their profile.
Well, that's
those 4.
I mean, I do feel Pittsburgh could win the Super Bowl. I don't feel Houston could.
They have the profile that fits these 50 teams. That's all I can say. Teams that I need more information on, because it's not fair to say they're in or they're out after 13 games. There's 4 more games. Still could qualify, include teams that aren't going to make it probably, but Minnesota, Denver, and the Chargers. Now, I don't think any of those teams are true Super Bowl contenders, but their profile is incomplete with 4 games to go. Most of the rest of the NFC, they don't qualify. If you look at them, Tampa, that resume doesn't qualify. Green Bay, that resume does not qualify. Seattle, that resume does not qualify. Like I said, Minnesota, still might qualify. We need 4 more games of data. But the bottom line there is that, would you be surprised if anybody but Detroit or Philly was the NFC representative?
Yes, I would be.
Yeah, that's the way it plays out. In the AFC, it's going to be a coin toss. But I will say this. I can promise you that I will be fading Buffalo in any playoff scenario. They have one of the least worthy playoff resumes I have ever seen, unless we put Josh Allen in a special category. So there's an exemption category. It's called the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady category, where regardless of your resume, if you have Tom Brady on your team, or if you have Patrick Mahomes on your team, or if you have Peyton Manning on your team, you still qualify for the Super Bowl because these guys are extraordinary individuals. You know, if Mahomes isn't on Kansas City, they're probably 4-9 this year, the way they're doinking field goals and guys are stepping out of bounds and stuff like that. But let me say this. And Tom Brady made 9 Super Bowl appearances. In 7 of the 9, New England had already qualified, even without Tom Brady's magic. Peyton Manning had, I think, 3 Super Bowl appearances. Twice he needed a Manning exemption. And once they had already qualified because their defense was so bad. And those were toss-up games anyway. The Brady games that they needed a special exemption, like last year, they barely qualified. Not last year, but the last year. The year that when he was with Tampa, when he made the Super Bowl, they needed a special exemption. So the question I have for you is, Buffalo's resume is so bad, would you consider giving Josh Allen a special exemption?
Yes.
Okay. And I can't if Buffalo had even a little bit better defense, and maybe that changes over the next 4 weeks.
Well, I'd say with a caveat, we've got they're kind of like in the Minnesota that question is sort of like in your Minnesota category. Let's see what happens in these 4 games, because Alan could certainly move his way out of that opinion for me in these 4 games.
Okay, that's fair. If the season ended today, Minnesota wouldn't qualify, and Buffalo would be so far away from qualifying that I couldn't give Josh Allen an exemption. I couldn't even give Tom Brady an exemption with the way Buffalo's defense and matches up. I mean, they don't even match up at all to making the Super Bowl, much less winning it.
Yeah, okay.
So I just wanted to throw that topic out because I'm less likely to make that, just like last week when I talked about week 18, I'm less likely to talk about this come playoff time. But it's just worthy to start putting this together as we're thinking about who really can win the Super Bowl. And to me right now, Detroit and Philly just have such a path for the NFC.
Well, let's see. Well, we just did talk about Steelers and the Eagles a little bit. Let's talk about that game a little bit. There's some inner strife going on with the clubhouse. AJ Brown is complaining about not getting the ball. Apparently, another player says Hurt and AJ don't get along anymore, and this is just nonsense sort of topics that these people are focused on, chasing down a title. And let's not forget, they were 10-1 last year, and all of a sudden dropped like a lead balloon in performance, and just things came across, or came apart there. Are we going to potentially see that happen again, or are they too solid to do that? Are we looking at cracks in the armor that should be respected, or is it just superficial noise?
Yeah, so I think we expected the 10-1 was smoke and mirrors last year. You and I were kind of ahead of the curve in terms of that one. I expect a little regression from Philly, not this week, but I expect a little regression from Philly as they go through, because, their power rating is high for me, but I think I have 3 teams ahead of them still. I think something is a little bit missing still. I just can't completely pinpoint it, but they have a resume. They've shorn up their 1 weak link from last year, and that's their secondary giving up late leads, because these guys, unless they have fatigue from being rookies, you can hit the rookie wall. These rookie cornerbacks and defensive backs are just, they're hitting the ground running. They're playing fantastic ball. But are they elite in any area? I don't know. I mean, having Barkley is unbelievable, but are they elite in any area?
I'm not so sure. It seems like they are above average in just about everything, but not elite in anything.
What I like about them is that because of the way the roster is built, they can withstand injuries, whereas other teams cannot. So it's a long season. So Philly is going to continue to perform because they have a next man up. They're too deep along the defensive line. They're deep at every position except wide receiver. So that helps them. But I'm in your camp. They don't have many flaws at all.
Well, their offensive line actually is pretty solid. They're making huge holes, and I think it's between Philadelphia and Detroit, when healthy, that have it's a competition on the 2 best offensive lines, isn't it?
Philly allows too many sacks, 36 for the season. Detroit doesn't allow that kind of sack pressure. So I think if push comes to shove and they're in, let's say down 10 in the 4th quarter, you can get a pass rush on Philly because they're going to have to pass more often. And in the playoffs, that comes more into the scope of what we're handicapping. closer games. They could be behind. Can they win it by passing the ball?
That's going to be a really interesting game. I'm not done really looking at that game yet. But you inferred that you expect them to have a good game against the Steelers.
Well, I don't think you were born the last time Pittsburgh won at Philly.
How long's it been?
1965.
Tomlin wasn't born then.
Yeah, I will give Pittsburgh a lot of credit for. You have to give Pittsburgh a lot of credit. This is really a great performance by Pittsburgh all along. So maybe this is the year. We'll see. Here's the thing I like and dislike about turnover ratios. A turnover ratio tells you, okay, if you have a Baker Mayfield, if you have a Jameis Winston, you expect that they're not going to win the turnover battle. But how sustainable is a plus 17 turnover ratio when you're playing against a team that doesn't turn it over? So Pittsburgh has a plus 17 turnover ratio, which is an unbelievable mark. But can they win the turnover ratio? Can they win the turnover battle against a team like Philly? I think it lessens or it cheapens that plus 17 turnover ratio, that you can't give them credit for it in this game. And am I wrong?
Pittsburgh's played quite the team, the assortment of teams this season. They've had certainly a more difficult schedule than Philadelphia has had.
Yeah, but the parade of quarterbacks that they played are probably more turnover prone.
Yeah, I'm going to have to take that's an interesting look at that game.
It's a topic of discussion. That's the very essence of what we're doing here, brainstorming. Should we think differently of Pittsburgh's plus 17 turnover ratio when they play a team like Philly? Yes or no? And I don't know that I have the definitive answer. I'm just not using it as a positive this week as I would in other weeks.
What about the Rams 49ers game? Do you have any insight on that game?
I think San Francisco got reset and they're in the right frame of mind. Unfortunately for them, they're down another running back. I mean, on the Rams defense, I'm trying to compare defenses, and I would say 49ers have the better defense. Any disagreement there?
Well, yeah, of course they do.
Yeah. Now, Puka Nacua seems to be unguardable. I mean, he
apparently he is.
Yeah, an unbelievable player. I mean, a fascinating game. San Francisco lost to them, which was much appreciated earlier in the year. This is an important game, obviously. And if Seattle starts running away with it, that Seattle-Green Bay game is one we could discuss. I don't have any particular feeling about this game. It's not one of the 6 that interested me in August, and it's not one of the games that I'm focusing on right now. I'll have to do more work. I don't even know if I'll be involved.
I don't think this game has any marriage at all to the Green Bay Seattle effort. Do you?
No, I mean, these teams have to. The Green Bay Seattle is afterwards, regardless of what. I mean, they need to win this game. This is almost like a play-in game. It ends San Francisco's season. San Francisco has a terrible divisional record, a terrible record against the NFC West. If they lose a second game to the Rams after other losses in the division, this is it for San Francisco. Their season is on the line right now.
Well, they only have a 5% chance of making the playoffs. So
yeah.
The reason I just brought that up is once you get into these late weeks, you have to, when you have games starting at different times, you have to at least consider whether a result in an earlier played game affects, the players in a later playing game. So we know that they try to schedule against that type of cause and effect on week 18, but they don't do it in the previous weeks. So just something to be, have in your wheelhouse of consideration.
I agree completely. Actually, it is in my arsenal every year, not to use this week, but the last 3 weeks of the season, I have metrics on teams that need to win the game, teams that are completely out of the game, out of the playoff picture, and so on. But it doesn't kick in until there are 3 games left, not 4.
That makes sense. That makes sense. We're too far out.
Yeah.
Jets, Jaguars. You got. I'm kind of surprised to see the Jets favored, but my numbers say they're supposed to be. So
We've reached our limit on that game.
yeah. Cincinnati, Tennessee. Cincy on a short week. They won, but laid a dud.
Yeah, if Cincy had regular rest, I would consider them as a road favorite, but I really would prefer not to like Tennessee.
We talked about Baltimore and the Giants, Kansas City and Cleveland. I thought this line was very odd.
Yeah, I tried to do a little weather handicapping at this point of year. I have a feeling this is going to be a wide open game. That's Cleveland. I don't know if you're going to get lake effect for this game like you normally do in December.
I haven't seen that there's going to be any. The weather's changing. It's too early to really know what the weather's going to be at this point.
Yeah.
But even with so many one-score wins. I think Kansas City's 0-7 against the spread, and a team. There's never been a team that's lost more than 5 in a row that's made the Super Bowl.
Yeah. At this point, if Kansas City has to play, the unfortunate thing that was fortunate for both of us last year is that Kansas City got to rest their starters week 18 last week, and it reset, and we won, and we did a great job. Kansas City may have the same scenario play out. I'm kind of hoping it doesn't play out this year, because I don't see Kansas City. They're just not one of the best teams, but maybe they get that reset and they become one of the best teams, just like last year.
I mean, Kansas City's got that big lead right now. I don't think there's any urgency. I think that's why the line is where it is, because of Kansas City can't seem to get separation, and their motivation is in question. If a game starts off poorly, is it worth their effort to make it, try to exert all this energy and risk to try to beat Cleveland when they've got this kind of lead in the race for number 1?
That's why I was hoping it would be colder, windy and cold. That's what I was hoping.
Dallas and the Panthers. I was surprised by this line.
Which way?
You're not surprised?
No, I mean, I'm not surprised at the line. I thought they would undercut it a little bit. Personally, it's a good situation for Carolina. I thought they would get a little extra credit for that.
What did you make the line?
I made the line 2.5.
Carolina?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we might have a disagreement, but I think I would trust Carolina more than Dallas.
Buffalo and the Detroit Lions.
So I'm surprised at this line. Buffalo at Los Angeles plays that barn burner of a game, tries to come back, can't quite come back. Then they travel again to Detroit, while Detroit is sitting at home after Thanksgiving with 10 days rest.
Yeah, and Buffalo's being bet. I mean, I guess there's fewer 1.5s out there than there were this morning. So Detroit is getting some play.
So do you treat this is an important question to me. Do you treat this as this line is telling that maybe I'm wrong? Speaking for myself, I thought the line would be a field goal. it's not a field goal. It's not trending toward a field goal. Is this telling me that there are smart people out there setting the line saying that this is a good spot for Buffalo?
I think that there's a hell of a lot of Buffalo fans out there, and Josh Allen fans, and Detroit off that extra rest kind of gets forgotten a little bit, and what you do remember is them sliding by Green Bay at home, barely getting by, and you add up all their injuries and such. You really worry about backing the Lions against a team not offensively challenged. So I think that's the logic behind the line.
The August number, do you want to know what the number was when I bet it in August? Detroit -2.
Really?
Same thing.
Wow.
And my reasoning at that time, because I have my reasoning for every one of these plays, was exactly what I told you about. The Lions were expected to be good. Buffalo was expected to be good, although I didn't like their defense coming into this season. Off the road trip, now this road trip and so on. I had all these reasons. I thought Detroit was a better team and had the better scheduling. I still think that. And now that the line is still 2, I'm getting scared.
Well,
yeah, the over is so high though, 54.
I have a funny feeling that the Lions do not want to get into a shootout and will run that ball as much as they can and shorten the game. What do you think?
Yeah, I set the over under actually at 55, but I'm not playing this. I just set it because I thought that's what it should be. I'm just trying to anticipate the number so that I can start matching them up. Well, if they're expected to get 55, that means these teams are expected to get 4 touchdowns, 27, 28 points. How am I going to look at the matchups? It wasn't so much for betting the over-under in this game. It was for getting a feel for what's the correct number and how to deal with the offensive possessions in this game.
Well, you couldn't talk me into betting the over in this game, that's for sure. Just everything's got to go the offense's way, and you've got to have quick possessions or goofy turnovers.
Now, what you said is true for Detroit, but it's also true for Buffalo. If I'm Buffalo, I want to keep my own defense off the field.
Well, yeah, I don't think either team wants their defense on the field.
No, they do not.
I don't think that they're going to be out for these quick hit touchdowns.
Yeah. Buffalo's pass defense is near 70%. Jared Goff is salivating indoors.
Jeez. We kind of touched a little bit. You think that that bye for Denver came at a bad time? You got to. I think that they were really right on the right track and would have preferred to keep on going.
Yeah. I mean, the conflict is Peyton's really good with rest, but Denver as a team was firing on all cylinders. So it'll be interesting. The same plays that are open against Indy before the bye week are open against Indy after the bye week because Indy doesn't change defensively. The big question for me in this game is, will Indianapolis offense change with the 2 weeks to prep Richardson? And like you said before, Richardson presents a problem for Denver. I think the game is won or lost based on what Indy does offensively.
I think you're right. Well, yeah. Tampa and the Chargers, that what's that line? Chargers by a field goal.
Yeah, I don't have a feel for this right now. I would hope for the Chargers' sake that McConkey comes back.
I think he may not be back.
Wow. That would be something.
To do Packers and Seahawks.
So tell me where you set this line.
I was surprised I guess my initial reaction was that I was surprised Green Bay was 2.5 because Seattle is just they're doing all the right things. They're on a roll. They're at home. They've got the division lead, and there's always one of these teams that seems to run the table near the end of the season that you have to respect. And Green Bay is kind of sputtering along. I mean, they're not playing badly, but it just seemed like a great spot for Seattle.
Yeah, I agree. I made the line pick 'em. Well, my power ratings made the line pick 'em. I didn't have to do anything about it. And I said, okay, that sounds like a dead even game. If you give me 3 points on either team, which it was 3, then I'll take it. You give me Green Bay in 3, I'll take it. You give me Seattle in 3, I'll take it. If you run the game 100 times, I'm going to win, I think, 55 to 60 times with 3 points in either team in this game.
Yeah, I'd call the line like 2.80. The model doesn't put me on Seattle. It's sort of
I mean, I understand that because I have Green Bay higher power rated. That's why I got if I have the line at pick 'em, that means I think Green Bay is a slightly better team. So I agree with that, although Green Bay doesn't like playing at Seattle, but that's a different story. But this Sunday night game also, I think if they played this game 100 times, each side would win 50.
It's a rematch of that one Monday night game with that catch.
Yeah. The replacement ref game.
Yeah. Skip the Bears and the Vikings and Atlanta and the Raiders. Jeez.
Yeah. Too bad the Simpsons couldn't reschedule an Atlanta Vegas Wednesday afternoon game or something. Yeah. Desmond Ridder probably for Vegas against his old team.
I just think that I don't think Atlanta can lay more than a field goal on the road to anybody.
Yeah, this would be the kind of a game that afterwards, if I lost it, no matter on which side, I would say, why did I bet it? I prefer not to spend real money on either team if I can, but I will handicap it and see if there's an edge.
Well, we've got 2 Monday night games, and it's really too difficult for them to realize we'd like them to start more than a half an hour apart. The other anomaly this week, which I find it's like the one time that it's annoying, but you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 early games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 afternoon games, and then the Sunday night football. So a little bit more leveled action.
Yeah, that's nice.
So that makes it that just makes the dynamics a little bit more interesting for the week. And unfortunately, you've got Pittsburgh, Philadelphia playing at the same time Buffalo and the Lions are.
That's tough.
I mean, I don't know what the hell they're thinking. And then the early games, there is no decent game. There's no marquee game on the early game. So that's what's disappointing about it. They moved the Lions game. It was going to be an early start game originally.
Yeah, there's the haves against the have-nots in the mornings, or sometimes a couple of have-not teams. Tough one. Yeah. We'll see. But I like the slate as a whole. I obviously like the slate in August because I had 6 plays to begin with in August, even before we got to this point. So it should be an interesting weekend. I'm sorry I'm going to miss you guys because I have another commitment, a sad commitment, unfortunately, on Thursday. But Ted's got some great interviews. He went into both locker rooms last week with the Rams and with the Ravens. Was it with the Ravens? What locker rooms were? The Rams and the Bills. So he's got some stuff from DeMar Hamlin of Buffalo. I think he's got Josh Allen. I know he's got Puka with the Rams. So I think you're going to have a great show on Thursday, and you'll be further along in dissecting these games.
Geez, I think I accidentally deleted my chat with him. He did have a nice assortment of interactions. What's going on with this Green Bay game right now? They just dropped the Green Bay. The Seattle's getting bet.
Well, somebody's listening to us on the show. This can happen. But yeah, there has to be a correction in the line.
All right. Well, yeah, I'm kind of out of bullets. I'm a lot of moving parts for me this week. Appreciate everybody joining us. We're going to be. I'll be back on Thursday with Ted, and we'll have those interviews and some chit chat. And I'll be on the Bet US show tomorrow with Fezzik and Jared. What do you got? What do you got left this week, Ron?
Nothing at all this week. It's completely clear. Be starting to work on behind the scenes stuff. Be back with a full slate next week. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for the comments. Enjoy the week. A lot of stuff. I got a lot of action coming on probably this week. So good luck, everybody.
Sweet.